All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I know some of you are joining from the other part of the world, and hope you slept well yesterday after that uh, overload of information from our end. Now, today what we are going to really do is get a little, delve a little deeper into what's going on in PAWS, and a few of our country partners are going to showcase the work that's being done or that's being planned in different countries. None of this means that other countries are not are anyway far behind. It's just that these three countries, we thought they represent a nice diversity of the work that's going on under PAWS. But before we do that, some of you might remember yesterday we had a brief discussion about how we started and where we stand at this point in time. And to our surprise, at this point, Justine, Ranjini, and I, we are so overwhelmed and grateful to the support that each of you has provided with sharing information for the for the metadata that we have tried to put together. So without really coming in between you and our next speaker, which is Justine, who's going to talk about the PAWS global metadata update. And please hold on to your seats because it's spectacular. You're going to love what Justine shows next. So over to you, Justine. Muted.
Yeah. Thank you, Kustub. Can you see my screen?
We do.
Great. So hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm, as Kustub said, I'm Justine, and I'm going to present on behalf of the PAWS team and on behalf of all of the teams across the range today. And yesterday we had really an exceptional, interesting interaction with leading experts and thinkers in different fields related to PAWS, along with around 40 PAWS partners and practitioners across the world. And we were very happy to see a number of country teams represented. Many of the videos from yesterday's breakout sessions are now available in the GSEP virtual platform, and many of them are coming. So thank you for joining us then. And yesterday we were able to touch upon a number of areas where PAWS has made progress, as Kustub just highlighted, so that we hope that yesterday's discussion feeds into today's more formal agenda. So I'm starting this session with an update on the PAWS progress, taking stock of what teams across the range have already achieved so far. And we presented a summary version of this during the GSLAP steering committee last week. But today we have the opportunity to go into more depth and discuss some of the implications of the update. So I just want to say at this stage of the presentation, just based on what we collated so far by the GSLAP PAWS team, we recognize that there's still other information out there and efforts across the range that are not displayed here, but we hope to get in touch with those efforts in the future. So this is, I guess we can say, even just a subset of potentially what work has been done across the range. So as we look back at the PAWS objectives, I just wanted to remind us about how ambitious and potentially significant the PAWS initiative will be for snow leopard conservation. So as many of you know what PAWS stands for, but just in case, it's the Population Assessment of the World's Snow Leopards that aims to generate a truly robust estimate of how many snow leopards there are across the 12 countries in Asia, across an area that could be 1 to 2 million square kilometers. So the task of GSLAP has set itself with the support of all range governments is no easy task. But it is really important because it provides a really important baseline for understanding the status of the species and how it changes over time, especially related to global threats. It is a key point of reference as we assess our conservation efforts. It is also a keystone for international advocacy for the snow leopard as a species based on science. And finally, I think it goes, as we discussed yesterday, it goes wider than the snow leopard and provides an indicator of health for high mountain areas, for people, wildlife, and other species. So as many of you know, the PAWS initiative was launched in 2017 through the GSEP Bishkek Declaration, and this is still an ambitious goal of estimating population of snow leopards by 2022. So we are halfway there. So what has been the progress so far? So as Kustub shared, we're really thrilled to share this recent update. So across all the snow leopard range, governments and teams have now been able to collate a first set of surveys of snow leopard abundance in their countries. And we have collated information from 29 teams across all snow leopard range countries so far. So we were really encouraged to actually get the latest updates from Uzbekistan and Afghanistan just this week, so that we covered all 12 countries. So a special thanks to these teams and all the other teams across the range. So these 29 teams, they represent 125 different survey sites, which have been identified by governments and national teams and submitted to PAWS. So the green boxes that you can see on this map, they represent 79 of these sites that took place between 2017 to 2020 and meet PAWS guidelines. So what do we mean when we say meet PAWS guidelines? Well, we mean potentially covering at least 400 kilometers squared each, and camera traps set up systematically for at least 3 months. But as mentioned yesterday during the PAWS, during the Solve My Problem session, PAWS guidelines for SCR are relatively open, but retain a strong emphasis on collecting snow leopard individual recaptures and covering large areas to have these kind of recaptures and ensuring that the SCR models are robust and comparable. So this map, as you can see, captures how teams in very different ecological settings, from the north of Russia, the Gobi in Mongolia, to the southern, more Himalayan mountains, to Afghanistan, are following similar methods and putting in effort that meet the PAWS guidelines and can be used for an estimate of the global snow leopard population. And at a minimum, these 79 sites that meet PAWS kind of guidelines cover 133,000 kilometers squared. So that's an estimated to equal between 6 to 7% of what is believed to be the snow leopard range. So this, as Kustub just shared, is really extraordinary achievement. We were really surprised to see already such a huge effort in the field. And I think a huge tribute is deserved to all the teams working at the local country level and really contributing to this really important effort. So please, thank you all for really submitting and contributing to this global work. However, we should recognize that it still leaves us some important gaps in coverage. And all this information has been brought together only in the last few weeks. Actually, we didn't even have a real understanding of the effort until just recently, because this was prepared for the GSLEP steering committee meeting. But there still is further work that needs to be done. For example, we hope to follow up with additional teams that have not, for example, been able to submit their information yet. We also need to understand further the gaps in more detail, country by country, and with the different teams to kind of understand what are the further gaps. And David will share a little bit more about how one could do this in a later session today. However, from our preliminary assessment in collaboration with the PAWS Technical Committee, it suggests that currently sites may be biased to more rugged landscapes. So the blue in this graph, the blue columns, they seem to indicate that the current levels of coverage of ruggedness index of the 125 sites. So they're the coverage of the 125 sites. While the red bars, the other red bars, indicate ruggedness averages across the snow leopard range, so predicted for the snow leopard range. And if you look at it, it's quite interesting because it shows a tendency for PAWS sites to select more rugged areas of around an index of 300 to 400, while snow leopard habitats tend to be more even and found between 0 to 400. So this may therefore suggest that there's a bias in sites to more rugged areas. So higher ruggedness could be seen as an indicator of more suitable habitats for snow leopard. The data we have at the moment, therefore, could mean that there's not yet a full understanding of snow leopard abundance in less favorable habitats. And again, we need to look at this closely at regional level and country level, but this is a kind of a global kind of indication at this stage. And we'll have to look at this in further detail, and we'll keep everyone updated. And as an example of such biases towards favorable habitats, teams in Mongolia actually have assessed coverage in more detail. So I think Gantulga is going to share more about this in the next presentation, but from the map to the left, you can see the whole snow leopard distribution. So this is in the occupancy surveys that they did at the country level in this kind of coloring scheme, covering from the Gobi all the way to the Altai. And the black areas in the map are where teams have already surveyed with camera traps, which is a huge coverage of large areas of the country. But if we were to use the data from the current sites, simulations from the PAWS team and WF Mongolia suggest that Mongolia's snow leopard population would be overestimated by up to potentially 25%. This is because few current sites cover low habitat areas, which are seen in like yellow or lower kind of greenish areas in the map in Hungai or the Western Gobi. So the teams in Mongolia are now planning to cover some of these other sites in less suitable occupancy areas in order to take into account and reduce this bias. And as Ian articulated yesterday, the simulations suggest that they only need to cover a few sites in these less snow leopard occupancy sites. But I'll let Gantulga share a little bit more about this and the strategic national effort in Mongolia in the next talk. So another potential gap that's from our preliminary observations using the PAWS data so far is that many surveys are found in protected areas. So at least 32% of sites are in protected areas. And it could be higher because we actually don't have the information on all of the sites, whether they're protected or not. And this is much higher than what is predicted to be across the entire snow leopard range. As an example, this map is from a publication in 2016 that suggests that there are around 170 protected areas that overlap with what is classified as definitely or probably inhabited by snow leopards. And that equals to around 18% of the range. So non-protected areas may need our explicit attention in future surveys. So I've just shared with you some really great news about how much we have covered already, but we also are collating information on what is planned. So what we shared was what's happened since 2017, so in the last year, but there are teams that are already out there collecting more information as we speak, or do plan to do more surveys in the next year or two. And there are at least 22 sites that have been identified in Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Nepal, Uzbekistan, and Mongolia, and that are being surveyed using PAWS guidelines. And some of the teams are working with our help desk to try to minimize bias that we were talking about yesterday. So we're still hoping that this number will increase across the range. But I think what's most important than the actual numbers of surveys is we need to emphasize the need to address some of the gaps that potentially we've already talked about, or gaps that we'll identify in the future, so that there's less bias in national and global estimates. So it's too early for our teams to provide specific recommendations, but we hope to be working with teams in the future and see what remains to be done. And David will share a little bit more about this in the way forward in the next session. And just to highlight, one of the features of PAWS that I would like to end with, and that Kustub will provide more of an overview with in his session, is capacity building. And we hope that this is one of PAWS' major long-term contributions for snow leopards. So as part of PAWS, there has been considerable progress in building tools and capacities in each country in study design, planning, data analysis. And it reminds us this PAWS is more than a number, because over 250 people, for example, have been engaged, Kustub highlighted yesterday, throughout the range and trained in PAWS best practices. So this capacity building aspect of PAWS is one that we hope to continue in this next phase. And we hope the benefits will go beyond the final estimate itself. So summing up, I think there are three guiding principles that has guided PAWS so far since it began in 2017, in the last 3 years, and that we hope they will continue to take us forward in the next stage. And the first one has really been the emphasis on the latest science, which has actually evolved also in the last 3 years, thanks to our technical team. And there has been we've been trying to take advantage and make these new methods available to teams across the range as rapidly as possible and adapting them to the local conditions. And I just wanted to recognize that much of these developments are also thanks to many of the teams at the national or field level that are contributing and working to develop many of these methods. So thank you everyone across the range for contributing to this global effort. And another key theme that we've heard a lot about yesterday and today is collaborations and sharing best practices. And it's I think it's so significant. We've seen already 79 sites across the 12 countries are using similar methods to survey snow leopards. And I mean, that's a huge achievement. And I think it's as a result of this open source science and individual scientists sharing and coming together to survey snow leopards. And finally, with such a large coverage so far, it highlights this very national commitment, which is vital to PAWS and to see it take forward. But before I end, I just wanted to mention that in yesterday's discussion came up many ideas of how these three themes can be taken forward, and we look forward to further discussions later today. But this update really aims to set an idea of what's going on and to explore further with our next set of speakers. And we really welcome any comments or updates at the end of the series of talks. So don't forget all your questions, because the PAWS team is really thrilled to share with you all this news. So I'm looking forward to the next set of talks where we can really zoom into some of these efforts in more detail. Thank you, Kustub.